Produced by Enterprise College. Directed by Dr. David K. Ewan. The Enterprise Engine. The cost of winning. When growth looks successful, one number reveals whether it can last. Hello and welcome. Every business has to answer one simple question. Are the customers we win worth more than what we spend to win them? That question sits at the center of the LTV to CAC ratio. LTV means lifetime value. It is the total value a customer brings to a company over the time they stay with it. LTV again is lifetime value. And CAC means customer acquisition cost. It is the total cost of getting that customer in the first place. Okay? When we compare the two, we get a practical way to judge whether growth is healthy or dangerous. So remember, LTV is lifetime value and CAC is customer acquisition cost. The core thesis of this show is straightforward. The LTV to CAC, so the lifetime value to customer acquisition cost, that's a ratio. That helps a business see whether its growth model makes sense. It does not tell the whole story by itself, but it gives leaders a clear starting point. If a company spends too much to gain customers who do not stay long or spend much, growth can look exciting on the surface while quietly destroying cash. If a company gains customers at a reasonable cost and those customers continue buying, renewing, or referring others, growth becomes stronger and more sustainable. A simple example makes the idea easier to understand. Imagine a company spends $100 on marketing, sales time, promotions, and onboarding to win one customer. If that customer brings in $300 in profit over the life of the relationship, the LTV to CAC ratio is 3-to-1. For every dollar spent to acquire the customer, the company gets $3 back in value. That is usually a much healthier picture than spending $100 to earn only $90 back. This ratio is especially useful because it forces a business to connect two parts of the company that are often discussed separately. Marketing teams may focus on leads, clicks, campaigns, and signups. Sales teams may focus on closing deals. Product teams may focus on usage and satisfaction. Finance teams may focus on margins and cash flow. The LTV, lifetime value to CAC, customer acquisition, customer acquisition ratio, brings these pieces together. It asks whether the whole system is producing customers who are valuable enough to justify the cost of bringing them in. The ratio also helps prevent a common mistake: confusing activity with progress. A company can spend heavily, attract attention, and add many new customers. That can feel like success. But if those customers leave quickly, buy only once, demand heavy discounts, or require costly support, the company may be running faster without getting stronger. The LTV, lifetime value, to CAC, customer acquisition cost ratio, slows the conversation down and asks what kind of growth is actually being created. A healthy ratio is not about being cheap. Sometimes spending more to acquire a customer is wise, especially when the customer is likely to stay for years or expand their spending. The point is balance. Customer acquisition should be seen as an investment, not just an expense. Like any investment, it needs a reasonable return. The LTV to CAC ratio is one of the clearest ways to check that return in plain business terms. Still, the ratio must be used with care. LTV, lifetime value, is an estimate, not a fact carved in stone. CAC, customer acquisition cost, can be calculated in different ways. A business may have different customer groups with very different economics. A single average can hide important details. So, the best use of LTV to CAC is not to treat it as a magic number. The best use is to treat it as a conversation starter, a diagnostic tool, and a guide for better decisions. In simple terms, the LTV to CAC ratio tells a company whether it is buying growth wisely. A good ratio suggests that the company can afford to keep investing in customer acquisition. A weak ratio warns that the company may need to improve pricing, retention, marketing, efficiency, product quality, or customer targeting. The ratio is powerful because it turns a broad question about business health into a number that people can discuss, test, and improve. So let me put this all into context with some background. The idea between LTV, lifetime value, and CAC, which is customer acquisition cost, is not new, even though the terms have become especially popular in modern digital businesses. Merchants have always cared about whether repeat customers were worth the effort needed to attract them. A local shop owner may not have used the phrase lifetime value, but the idea was there. A loyal customer who returned every week was clearly more valuable than a one time buyer who came only because of a discount. Before digital marketing, a customer acquisition was often measured in broad and imperfect ways. A company might spend money on newspaper ads, radio spots, mailers, billboards, or trade shows. Leaders could see total sales rise or fall, but it was harder to know exactly which spending created which customers. They could still estimate whether marketing was working, but the picture was often blurry. The link between a specific acquisition cost and a specific customer's future value was difficult to measure. As business became more data driven, the picture changed. Catalog companies, credit card companies, subscription services, and direct response marketers began tracking customers more carefully. They could see who bought, who returned, who responded to an offer, and who stayed active. This made it easier to think about customers not isolated transactions, but as relationships that could produce value over time. The rise of software, e commerce, mobile apps, and subscription businesses made LTV to CAC, that's lifetime value to customer acquisition cost ratio, even more important. Many of these companies spend money upfront to win customers, then earn revenue later through repeat purchases, monthly subscriptions, upgrades, or renewals. In that kind of model, the first purchase may not be profitable by itself. The business depends on the customer staying long enough for the company to recover acquisition costs and earn a return. Software as a service, SaaS, software as a service, those type of companies helped make the ratio famous. In a subscription software business, a customer may pay every month or every year. The company may spend heavily on ads, sales calls, demos, free trials, and onboarding before receiving enough revenue to cover these costs. Investors and managers therefore need to know whether the long term customer relationship justifies the upfront spending. LTV to CAC, so that's lifetime value, the customer acquisition cost, became a shorthand way to judge the quality of that growth. The ratio also became popular because many modern businesses can scale quickly. A digital company can increase ad spending, add salespeople, or enter new markets faster than old fashioned physical businesses could ever do. That speed creates opportunity, but it also creates risk. If the economics are strong, scaling can build a valuable company. If the economics are weak, scaling can multiply losses very quickly. The LTV to CAC ratio, so lifetime value to customer acquisition cost ratio, helps leaders decide whether to press the gas or fix the engine first. Over time, a common rule of thumb developed, a ratio around 3 to 1. That's right, 3 to 1 is often considered healthy in many growth businesses. This means a customer generates about 3 times as much value as the cost required to acquire that customer. But this is only a general guideline. A young company may accept a lower ratio while it learns. A mature company may need a higher ratio. A business with very fast payback may be able to work with different numbers than a business that waits years to recover its acquisition costs. Another important historical change is the growing focus on retention. In the past, many companies placed most of their energy on winning new customers. Today, more leaders recognize that keeping good customers is often cheaper and more profitable than constantly replacing lost ones. LTV to CAC, so lifetime value to customer acquisition cost, that ratio makes this point visible. If customers leave quickly, lifetime value falls. If retention improves, lifetime value rises. The ratio, therefore, reminds companies that acquisition and retention are deeply connected. This background makes matters because it shows why the ratio became so central. It did not appear because business people wanted another number to track. It appeared because modern companies needed a clearer way to understand the economics of customer relationships. As customer data improved and growth became faster, the need for a simple measure became stronger. LTV to CAC, the lifetime value to customer acquisition cost, filled that need by joining the cost of winning customers with the value those customers produced over time. Now, let's take a look at some of the evidence. One useful way to understand the LTV to CAC ratio is to look at different types of businesses. The same ratio can appear in many settings, but it does not always mean the same thing. A subscription software company, like software as a service, an online clothing store, a gym, and a local service business all acquire customers and hope to earn value from them. Yet the timing, risk, and customer behavior can vary between all of those. They can all be different. Consider a small subscription software company that sells project management tools to small teams. The customer spends money on search ads, content marketing, webinars, sales calls, and onboarding support. After adding up these costs, it finds that the average cost to acquire a customer is $600. The average customer pays $100 per month. And after accounting for service costs and expected cancellations, the company estimates that the average customer brings in $2,400 in lifetime value. The ratio is 4 to 1. This suggests that acquisition is working well, at least on average. But the company should not stop there. When it breaks the data into customer groups, it learns something important. Customers who come through educational webinars have a higher acquisition cost, but they stay longer and invite more team. Their ratio is excellent. Customers who come through discount ads are cheaper to acquire, but many cancel after the promotion ends. Their ratio is weak. The overall company average looks healthy, but the deeper evidence shows that not all growth channels are equal. Now consider an e-commerce brand selling home goods. It spends heavily on social media ads to bring shoppers to its website. At first, the company celebrates because sales rise quickly. But after reviewing the numbers, it discovers that many customers buy only once. The average acquisition cost is $45, while the average lifetime profit from each customer is only $60. The ratio is about 1 to 3. That's for each one. That means the business is getting some value acquisition spending, but not enough to feel safe. A small rise in ad prices or product returns could raise the profit. The e-commerce company has several options. It can improve repeat purchasing through email campaigns, better product bundles, loyalty rewards, or improve customer experience. It can raise prices if customers see enough value. It can reduce customer acquisition costs, that's CAC, by improving ad targeting or depending less on paid ads. It can also focus on customer groups that come back more often. The LTV to CAC ratio does not solve the problem by itself, but it points leaders towards the right questions. Gym or fitness studio offers another clear example. A studio may spend money on local ads, free trial classes, referral bonuses, and staff time to sign up new members. Suppose it costs $150 to acquire a new member. If the average member stays only for 2 months and pays $80 per month, the lifetime revenue is not strong enough, especially after rent, instructor pay, and equipment costs. But if the studio improves the onboarding experience and helps members build habits, the average member may stay for 8 or 10 months. In that case, the same acquisition cost becomes much easier to justify. This example shows why retention can be the hidden lever in the ratio. Businesses often try to lower customer acquisition costs, that's CAC, first because acquisition costs are easy to see. But improving LTV, that's lifetime value, can be just as powerful. Better customer service, clearer communication, stronger product value, and thoughtful follow-up can make customers stay longer. When customers stay longer, the business can afford to spend more to acquire the right customers without becoming reckless. A business to business service firm gives a different kind of evidence. Imagine a consulting company that sells annual contracts to mid sized companies. Its sales cycle is long and expensive. It may take months of networking, proposals, meetings, and legal review to close one client. The customer acquisition costs, CAC, could be thousands of dollars. At first, that seems high, but if the client renews for several years, buys additional services, and refers other clients, the lifetime value may be far higher. A high customer acquisition CAC customer acquisition cost is not automatically bad. And it's only bad when the value that follows is too low. The evidence across these examples supports a basic lesson. The ratio most useful when it is connected to real business behavior. A number like 3 to 1 or 4 to 1 is helpful, but the story behind the number matters. Which customers are included? Which costs are accounted? How long do customers stay? Are margins strong? Are customers growing over time or shrinking? The best companies use the ratio not as a trophy, but as a map. Another pattern appears in many companies. The earliest customers are not always the best guide to future economics. A young company may gain its first customers through personal networks, founder-led selling, or strong early enthusiasm. That can make CAC, customer acquisition cost, look low. Later, when the company tries to reach a large market, it may need paid advertising, a bigger sales team, partnerships, or more support. CAC, customer acquisition cost, rises. At the same time, later, customers may be less loyal than early fans. This is why leaders should keep measuring the ratio as the business grows, not just once at the beginning. Evidence also shows that payback period matters alongside with the ratio. Payback period is the time it takes to earn back the cost of acquiring a customer. A business could have a good LTV to CAC ratio, but still struggle if it takes too long to recover the cash. For example, a company may spend $1,000 to acquire a customer worth $4,000 over 5 years. That looks strong in total, but if the company needs cash now, waiting years can create pressure. This is why many businesses look at both the ratio and the speed of the payback. The case studies all lead to the same practical conclusion. LTV, lifetime value, to CAC, customer acquisition cost, helps businesses compare the cost of growth within the quality of growth. It encourages leaders to look beyond signups and revenue headlines. It also helps teams decide whether or where to invest, which customer groups to prioritize, and which parts of the customer journey needs improvement. The best evidence is not just the ratio itself, but the decisions that become clearer after the ratio is understood. Now, let's do some analysis. Although the LTV to CAC ratio is useful, it can also be misleading. One major criticism is that lifetime value is based on predictions. A business usually does not know exactly how long a customer will stay or how much the customer will spend in the future. It estimates these things using past behavior. If the market changes, if competitors improve, if prices rise, or if customer habits shift, the estimate may become wrong. This is especially risky for young companies. A startup may have only a small amount of customer data. It may assume customers will stay for years, even though it has been operating for only a short time. That can lead to an overly optimistic LTV. If leaders believe the lifetime value is higher than it really is, they may spend too much on acquisition and call it growth later when customers cancel or fail to expand. The business may discover that the ratio was built on hope more than evidence. Another counter argument is that CAC, that's customer acquisition cost, can be calculated too narrowly. Some companies include only advertising spend. Others include sales salaries, marketing software, agency fees, events, discounts, free trials, and onboarding costs. If a business leaves out important costs, CAC looks lower than it actually is. A ratio that appears healthy may become weak once the full cost of acquisition is included. There is also a problem with averages. A company may report one LTV to CAC ratio for the whole business, but that average can hide big differences. One customer group may be very profitable while another destroys value. One marketing channel may attract loyal customers while another attracts bargain hunters. One product may have strong retention while another has high return or high churn. Looking only at the average can cause leaders to keep funding weak areas because the stronger areas cover them up. The ratio can also encourage short-term thinking if used badly. Teams may become obsessed with lowering customer acquisition costs, that's CAC, and avoid useful investments in brand, education, community, or product experience. Some of these investments are hard to connect to immediate customer acquisition, but they may create long-term trust and demand. If leaders judge every activity only by short-term CAC, they may weaken the very things that make customers want to stay. A related issue is that a very high LTV to CAC ratio is not always good news. At first, that sounds strange. If customers are worth much more than they cost to acquire, isn't that wonderful? Sometimes it is. But sometimes it means the company is under investing in growth. If a business has a ratio of 10 to 1 and plenty of market demand, it may be too cautious. It may be leaving profitable customers for competitors A healthy ratio must be interpreted together with market size, cash position, capacity, and strategy. Some critics also point out that the ratio can ignore customer experience. A company might improve the ratio by cutting support costs, pushing customers into higher prices, or using aggressive sales tactics. In the short term, the numbers may improve. In the long term, trust may fall. Customers may leave, complain, or damage the brand through negative word of mouth. This is why financial ratios should never replace common sense about customer relationships. There is also the issue of timing. A marketing campaign may attract customers today, but those customers may not reveal their true value for months or years. A retention improvement may raise LTV slowly. A brand campaign may reduce CAC later by making future customers easier to convert. The LTV to CAC ratio captures important economics, but it can lag behind the real causes of change. Leaders need patience and judgment when interpreting it. The best response to these counter arguments is not to abandon the ratio. The best response is to use it carefully. Companies should define LTV, lifetime value, and CAC, customer acquisition cost, clearly. They should separate customer groups, acquisition channels, and product lines. They should compare estimates with actual results over time. They should also pair the ratio with other measures, such as churn, gross margin, payback period, customer satisfaction, referral rates, and cash flow. In other words, LTV to CAC is like a dashboard light. It can warn you that something needs attention, but it does not explain everything by itself. A warning light in a car does not tell the driver the entire mechanical story. It tells the driver to look closer. In the same way, a weak ratio tells a business to examine acquisition efficiency, retention, pricing, and customer fit. A strong ratio tells a business to ask whether it can grow faster without harming quality. The ratio is strongest when it supports better thinking rather than replacing thinking. It should invite questions, not end them. Why is this customer group more valuable? Why does this channel have lower retention? Why are customers leaving after the first month? Why does one sales team produce stronger long-term accounts than another? These questions turn the ratio from a static number into a tool for learning. So the critical view is important. LTV to CAC can be misused, oversimplified, or manipulated. It can create false confidence if the inputs are weak. It can hide differences if leaders rely only on averages. But these flaws are not reasons to ignore it. They are reasons to treat it with discipline. A careful company can use the ratio to see more clearly, while a careless company can use the same ratio to tell itself a comforting story. So let's take a look at some final review of all of this. The LTV to CAC ratio is powerful because it asks a plain question in a disciplined way. Are our customers worth more than what we spend to win them? That question matters for every business that wants to grow without fooling itself. Revenue growth is exciting, but revenue alone does not prove that a business is healthy. New customers are encouraging, but new customers alone do not prove that acquisition spending is wise. The ratio connects growth to value. The main lesson is that businesses should not chase customers at any cost. They should chase the right customers at the right cost. The right customers are not always the cheapest to acquire. They are the customers who understand the value, stay long enough, buy enough, and fit the business well enough to make the relationship worthwhile. A company that understands this can spend with more confidence and less guesswork. At the same time, The ratio should not be treated as a magic answer. It is an estimate, a guide, and a signal. It depends on the quality of the data behind it. It becomes more useful when a company looks at customer segments, channels, margins, and retention patterns. It becomes less useful when leaders use one average number to explain a complicated business. The ratio should simplify the conversation without flattening quality. A practical call for any business is to start measuring the ratio in a clear and honest way. Define what counts as a customer acquisition cost. Decide how lifetime value will be estimated. Use contribution margin or profit-based value where possible, not just revenue. Review the numbers regularly. Compare different customer groups. Watch how the ratio changes as the company grows. Most of all, connect the number to action. If the ratio is weak, do not panic, but do not ignore it. Ask whether acquisition spending is too high, whether the wrong customers are being targeted, whether pricing is too low, whether customers are leaving too soon, or whether the product is failing to deliver enough value. Is it delivering enough value? A weak ratio is a signal to improve the system. It may point to marketing, sales, onboarding service, all kinds of service within the business, pricing, product quality, or customer fit. If the ratio is strong, do not simply celebrate. Ask whether growth can be increased responsibly. Can the company invest more in the best channels? Can it expand into similar customer groups? Can it improve onboarding so that new customers reach value faster? Can it maintain service quality while growing? A strong ratio gives permission to explore growth, but it still requires careful execution. The most important mindset is balance. Customer acquisition and customer value are not separate worlds. They are two sides of the same growth engine. Acquisition brings people in. Value keeps them, expands them, and makes the original investment worthwhile. A company that spends wisely but fails to deliver value will struggle. A company that delivers value but cannot acquire customers efficiently will also struggle. The ratio keeps both sides in view. In the end, LTV to CAC is not just a finance metric. It is a business health metric. It tells a story about how well a company understands its customers, how effectively it reaches them, how much value it delivers, and how sustainability it can grow. Used well, it helps leaders make calmer, smarter choices. It turns growth from a guessing game into a more measurable discipline. The call is simple. Measure the ratio, question the ratio, and improve the system behind the ratio. Do not use it to impress people with a clean number. Use it to understand the real economics of your customer relationship. When a business learns to see customer value and acquisition costs together, it becomes better prepared to grow in a way that it lasts. My name is Dr. David K. Ewan, and we go back to the studio.